A pale blue light flickered across the frozen plains of Uranus. Winds howled like wolves in the night, sweeping through jagged ice peaks and snow-covered valleys. The cold was not just outside. It felt like it could seep into your bones, into your mind. And somewhere in that icy nightmare, a fireball streaked across the sky. Captain Jace Thorne gritted his teeth as alarms screamed in his ears. His ship, the Echo's Luck, spun out of control, its thrusters dead, its hull broken. Screens blinked red. The autopilot was fried. The nav system, completely offline. He slammed a fist against the console, but it was no use. The ship was going down fast. Brace for impact, the A croaked one last time before shutting down. The crash was violent. Ice shattered. Metal screamed. Jace's head slammed against the seat. Then silence. Everything went black. Somewhere deep in the snow, the wreckage steamed and hissed. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Then the cockpit door creaked open, and Jace crawled out. Blood dripped from a cut above his eye. The cold punched him like a wall. He gasped. His breath turned to frost in the air. "You've really done it this time, Jace," he muttered, looking at the shattered remains of his only ride home. He checked his gear. No working radio. No heater. No backup power. He had to move, or he'd freeze to death. Wrapping his jacket tighter, Jace trudged forward through the snow, boots crunching with each heavy step. The planet's light was dim. Everything was a mix of silver and blue. Beautiful and deadly. As he moved deeper into the frozen wasteland, something caught his eye. A faint glow in the distance, blue and steady. It wasn't natural. It wasn't from his ship. And that meant only one thing: life. Desperate, Jace pushed himself toward the light. His legs ached. His body begged him to stop, but the glow was pulling him, whispering promises of warmth and safety. He reached the edge of a cliff, breathing hard. Below, nestled between spiked towers of ice, was a glowing cave entrance. Energy pulsed from within, soft, rhythmic, alive. Jace's heart pounded. He couldn't explain why, but the place felt old, sacred. A sudden sound made him freeze. Snow crunched behind him. He turned. Shadows moved across the snow. And then, from the white mist, a figure appeared. Tall, glowing, wrapped in armor made of ice and light. Not human. Before Jace could speak, more figures emerged, surrounding him. Their eyes glowed. Their weapons hummed. They looked like elves, but not from any story he knew. And they were definitely not happy to see him. Jess stood still, heart pounding like a drum inside his chest. The cold no longer bothered him, the fear did. The strange figures around him moved with grace, their footsteps barely making a sound in the snow. They wore long silver-blue cloaks that shimmered like moonlight, and their faces, though sharp and beautiful, held no warmth. One of them stepped closer. She was taller than the others, her skin glowing faintly with a soft, icy light. Her hair flowed like liquid silver down her back, and strange glowing lines moved across her arms like living tattoos. She spoke in a language Jace couldn't understand, soft, musical, but firm. When he didn't respond, her eyes narrowed. She raised her hand, and a shimmering blade of frost appeared in it, forming out of thin air. "Wait, I'm not your enemy," Jace said quickly, raising his hands. The elves didn't seem convinced. Another figure moved behind him and jabbed something sharp into his back. Before he could react, a cold pulse shot through his body. His knees gave out. He dropped to the snow, numb and dazed. Two of the elves grabbed him by the arms and dragged him toward the glowing cave. Inside, the world changed. The cave wasn't just ice. It was alive. Glowing crystals grew from the walls. The floor sparkled with frozen patterns that shifted underfoot. A soft hum filled the air, like a quiet song. Even in his dazed state, Jace felt it. The place was ancient, powerful. They brought him before a large, round chamber where dozens more elves stood. At the center sat a woman on a high, frozen seat. Her presence made Jace's breath catch. Her skin glowed brighter than the others, her eyes sharp and cold like daggers of ice. She wore a crown made of curved crystal, and her voice echoed through the chamber when she spoke. Though he couldn't understand the words, Jace knew she was the leader. The queen. She stared at him for a long time, her face unreadable. Then she pointed at him, then to the floor. One of the guards forced him to kneel. Jace clenched his jaw but didn't fight back. He was outnumbered and outmatched. Another elf stepped forward, a younger one with darker markings and curious eyes. She seemed different from the others. While the rest looked at him like he was a threat, this one studied him like a puzzle. She said something to the queen. The queen frowned. A short conversation followed, voices sharp and tense. Then the younger elf stepped closer to Jace and knelt beside him. "Do you understand me now?" she asked in clear, accented English. Jace blinked in surprise. "Yes. Who are you?" "My name is Saren," she said quietly. "You need to prove you're not a danger." "How?" he whispered. Saren's expression turned serious. "Through the trial of truth fire," she said. "If you're lying, it will destroy you." Jace followed Saren down a long, glowing tunnel deep inside the mountain. The walls pulsed with soft blue light, and frost-covered roots twisted through the stone like frozen veins. It was silent, except for the soft crunch of their footsteps and Jace's shaky breath. He was scared, not just because he didn't know what the truth fire was, but because the elves had the power to kill them. And this place didn't feel like it forgave mistakes. Saren walked beside him, holding a crystal torch. She moved with calm confidence, but Jace could tell there was worry in her eyes. "What exactly is this truth fire?" he asked. "It's an ancient crystal," she said, her voice low. "It sees memories, feelings, truth. If you're hiding something, it will know. If it senses evil, it burns." Jace frowned. "And if it doesn't sense evil?" "Then it reveals what's hidden, sometimes even things you didn't know about yourself." They reached a wide chamber, the air colder than before. In the center stood a tall crystal formation glowing like a frozen flame. It pulsed with slow, steady energy, as if it had a heartbeat. Surrounding it were 6 elven elders, their faces painted with ice symbols. The queen stood across the room, watching silently. Her expression was unreadable. "Step forward," one of the elders said in a deep voice. Jace hesitated. Saren gently touched his arm. "Trust it," she whispered. He nodded and walked toward the crystal. As he got closer, a strange warmth spread through his chest, despite the icy air. He placed his hand on the crystal surface. Suddenly, light exploded around him. Images flashed in his mind. Memories of Earth, of the crash, of being lost. But deeper images followed. Dreams, flashes of places he had never seen. Golden lights, battlefields, a symbol glowing on his skin. He gasped as the crystal's energy wrapped around him like a wave. It wasn't painful, but it was overwhelming. His mind felt open, naked. Then everything stopped. The crystal dimmed. The air grew still. A faint mark began to glow on Jace's right hand, an ancient symbol none of the elves had seen in generations. Gasps filled the chamber. "The mark of Kalar," an elder whispered. "Impossible," another said. "That line was broken centuries ago." The queen stepped forward, her eyes wide for the first time. She stared at Jace like he was something both feared and hoped for. "You are the Bridgeborn," she said slowly. "A being of both fire and frost. A myth." Jace blinked, confused. "I don't understand. I'm just a cargo pilot." Saren stepped closer, her face pale. "No, Jace, you're more than that now." Suddenly, the chamber was filled with noise. Some elves dropped to one knee in respect. Others shouted in anger and disbelief. The queen raised her hand, silencing them. "If he truly bears the mark," she said coldly, "then his fate must be tested. We cannot trust the prophecy alone." Saren's hand found Jace's. "You'll need allies now," she said softly. "And I choose to stand by you." Jace sat on a bench of smooth, glowing ice while Saren paced beside him. The grand hall beyond them was quiet now, but the weight of what happened in the trial lingered like a storm cloud. Jace touched the faint symbol on his hand. It pulsed gently, as if alive. "What does it mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Saren stopped pacing. She knelt and took his hand in hers. "That mark," she said softly, "is the symbol of the Bridgeborn. It was thought lost when Kalar vanished centuries ago." Jace frowned. "Bridgeborn?" She nodded. The Bridgeborn was a being born of two worlds, flesh and crystal, emotion and logic. Legends say they could unite disparate peoples and activate ancient biomechanical guardians. Jace's mind raced. "Why me?" Saren sighed. "I don't know why the crystal chose you, but the prophecy says the chosen must awaken their power through a ritual of trust and intimacy." His heart skipped. "Intimacy?" "Yes," Saren said, her cheeks coloring in the pale light. "The ritual binds your spirit to mine. Through that bond, your hidden abilities will surface. You'll learn to channel the crystal's power." Jace swallowed. "What if it doesn't work?" "Then the power remains dormant," Saren replied, "and we lose our only hope." He nodded, determination settling over him. "Tell me what to do." Saren rose and guided him to a shallow circular pool carved into the ice floor. Soft blue light shimmered in its depths. Crystalline patterns spiraled down into darkness. She motioned for him to stand at one edge. She stood at the opposite side, her silver hair flowing around her like water. "First," she said, "you must close your eyes and focus on my voice. Empty your mind of fear." Jay shut his eyes. He felt the cold air on his skin. He heard Saren's gentle whisper echoing in his thoughts. "Now," she said, "reach out with your mind to touch mine." He imagined a thread of light weaving between them. It felt strange, as if his consciousness stretched and trembled. The light wavered. "Deeper," Saren urged. "Trust me." He drew a steady breath and let go of doubt. The thread glowed brighter, connecting their minds. Saren's voice turned clear in his thoughts. "Good," she whispered. "Now step into the pool." Chase slowly stepped into the icy water. It was freezing, but he barely noticed. His focus was on the bond. Saren joined him. They stood chest deep in the glowing pool, fingertips brushing. "Hold my hand," Saren said. Jace reached out. Their fingers intertwined. A surge ran through him. Warmth bloomed in his chest. The light around them flared. Beneath the water, the spiral patterns shivered. Jace gasped. He saw visions, images of frozen sentinels awakening, of ancient battles, of the elves' exodus under a rose-colored sky. He felt joy and sorrow, fear and hope, all at once. Saren's grip tightened. "Stay with me," she said. He nodded, voice caught in his throat. The visions faded. The pool's glow settled into a steady pulse. When he opened his eyes, Saren's face was close. Her own eyes shone with tears and pride. "You did it," she said softly. "You awakened the Bridgeborn." Jay stared at his hand. The mark glowed stronger. He felt power coursing through him, cold and bright, alive. Saren smiled gently. "Together, we can save my people." Jace nodded, resolve burning in his heart. "Then let's begin." Jace and Saren stood at the threshold of a circular chamber carved into the living ice. Soft blue light radiated from cracks in the walls, forming patterns that danced like northern lights. The air was still and cold, but their breaths created gentle clouds between them. Saren held two crystalline chalices filled with a glowing sap, a sacred elven essence used only in the bonding ritual. Chase felt his heart thump in his chest. He had never done anything like this before. Saren stepped forward and placed one chalice on a low ice altar at the center of the room. She motioned for Jace to come closer. "This sap," she whispered, "will link our life forces. You must drink it with me so our spirits can merge." Her voice was steady, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of nervous hope. Jace nodded. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Saren uncorked the chalices and handed one to him. The sap was cool and slightly sweet, with a hint of starlight in its taste. As he drank, a warmth spread from his throat down into his heart. Saren drank her share, and Jace saw her face soften as the light in the chalice pulsed brighter. With the sap in their veins, Saren reached out and took Jace's hand. She guided him toward the altar, where a shallow pool of liquid crystal shimmered. "Step into the pool," she said. Jace did. The water was frigid, but he barely noticed. He felt a gentle tug in his mind, like the first whispers of a new song. Saren joined him, her free hand resting on Jace's shoulder. She closed her eyes and began to hum a soft melody, a tune passed down through Elven generations. The crystal pool responded, rippling with waves of pale light. Jace opened his mind to Saren's hum, letting the melody echo through him. Slowly he felt their thoughts intertwine. He shared memories of Earth, the roar of his ship's engines, the taste of coffee at dawn, the laughter of old friends. Saren shared Elven memories, the first snowfall on Uranus, the teaching of the elders, the hope that one day their people might be saved. The chamber's glow intensified. Tendrils of light rose from the pool and wrapped around them, binding them in a cocoon of warmth. Jace's vision blurred as he felt emotions he had kept hidden: fear, longing, the need to belong. Saren trembled beside him as she faced her own secret pain. The loneliness of exile, the burden of prophecy. Suddenly, a sharp pulse of light shot from the pool, enveloping them both. Jace gasped as sensations exploded across his skin. He felt strength in his arms, clarity in his mind, and a deep connection to Saren's heartbeat. The mark on his hand flared brighter than ever, its lines shifting into new patterns. Saren's tattoos glowed in response, linking with his mark in a braid of light. When the light faded, they were alone in the silent chamber. Jace opened his eyes and saw Saren looking at him with wonder. He felt changed, stronger, more certain. The bond was complete. He could sense her presence even without looking. Saren smiled, her breath still fogging in the cold air. "You did it," she whispered. "Our bond is sealed." Jace nodded, feeling the weight of destiny settle into his bones. "And now," he said softly, "we can face whatever comes next, together." Word of the bonding ritual spread quickly through the Elven citadel. Servants hurried through icy corridors, whispering of the Bridgeborn and his human ally. Guards stood at attention, eyes sharp and nervous. Jace and Saren felt the weight of every stare as they walked back toward the grand hall. The doors swung open, revealing Queen Illyria seated on her frozen throne. Her icy crown caught the pale light, casting fractured rainbows across the chamber. She rose slowly, her gaze fixed on Jace and Saren. The silence that followed felt like a living thing, pressing at their shoulders. "You dare." The Queen's voice rang out, cold as hollow steel. She pointed at Jace. "You human have violated our sacred laws. You have tainted the right of our people." Jace kept his head bowed. He sensed Saren trembling beside him. He thought of the ritual's warmth, of the bond they shared. He swallowed. "Your Majesty," he began, voice steady, "I did only what you commanded. I bore the mark and awakened the power to help your people." The Queen's eyes narrowed. She turned to Saren. "And you," she hissed, "chose to bind your life to a stranger. Have you no respect for our traditions?" Saren held her ground, but her face was pale. "I respect our traditions," she said softly. "This ritual is old, but the prophecy promised a Bridgeborn. We have one now." A murmur rose from the gathered elves. Some voices spoke of hope. Others cried betrayal. Queen Illyria slammed her fist on the arm of her throne. "Enough," she commanded. "The Bridgeborn must prove his worth. We will not trust a prophecy written in dust." She raised a hand, and 2 guards stepped forward to seize Jace. "Take him to the ice arena. Let him fight for his life." Jace's heart thundered, but he did not struggle. He glanced at Saren, whose eyes brimmed with fear and resolve. As they dragged him away, Saren called out, "Please, Your Majesty, this is not the way." But the Queen turned away, face carved in ice and anger. The ice arena lay at the heart of the citadel, a vast bowl carved from ancient glacier. The walls glowed faintly with embedded crystals. At its center stood Queen Illyria, arms crossed, watching. Jace knelt before her, chains of glowing frost around his wrists and ankles. "Rise," the Queen said. "Face your judgment." Jay stood slowly, surveying the empty arena. Silence pressed down on him. Then, from a hidden alcove, the queen summoned an opponent. A tall elven warrior, her armor sharp as icicles, her eyes burning with duty. She drew a frost-forged sword that crackled with cold energy. The warrior stepped forward. "I will prove your guilt," she declared. Her voice echoed against the cavern walls. Jace clenched his fists, feeling the mark on his hand pulse. He thought of Saren, of the ritual that bound them, of the hope he carried for this people. The arena air crackled as both combatants raised their weapons, the warrior's sword and Jace's own will. They charged. Steel sang on steel. Chase moved with surprising grace, his mind clear. Whenever the warrior lunged, he saw flashes of her hesitation, doubt born of his connection to Saren. He did not fight to kill. He fought to show her the truth. With a final parry, he disarmed the warrior, sending her sword skittering across the ice. He held his blade at her throat, breathing hard. Then he stepped back, lowering his weapon. "I do not wish to kill you," he said quietly. "We share a greater enemy." The warrior's eyes widened. She bowed her head. Queen Illyria rose, her face unreadable. Whispers filled the arena as the weight of Jace's words settled over the elves. The queen studied him, her anger mingling with curiosity. At last, she spoke. "You fight not as a human, but as one of us. We will see if your words ring true." She gestured to the guards. "Release him." As the chains fell away, Jace looked toward the throne, where Saren watched with cautious hope. The queen's wrath had not fully lifted, but something had shifted. The first crack of understanding appeared in her icy gaze. Jace, Saren, and Queen Illyria stood before the great gates of the frostborn chamber deep beneath the citadel. The chamber's entrance was carved into living glacier, its surface etched with runes that glowed like starlight. Two huge doors of ice and metal blocked their way. Saren placed a hand on the runes, and they pulsed in response. "The Frostborn are our ancient protectors," Saren said softly. "They rest until a Bridgeborn awakens them." Jace stepped forward. He felt the mark on his hand warm and throb. He reached out and touched the runes beside Saren's hand. The glow intensified, and the doors began to grind open. Cold air rushed out, smelling of ancient power. Inside, rows of Frostborn warriors stood silent. Each figure was half ice, half machine. Their armor was carved from crystal and reinforced with metal. Their bodies were still as stone, their eyes dark and empty. Cables ran from their spines into the ice floor. Queen Illyria raised her voice. "Bridgeborn, show us your power." Chase nodded. He stepped into the chamber and raised his hand. The mark on his skin flared, sending waves of blue light through the cables. The Frostborn remained motionless. Saren placed a small crystal globe at Jace's feet. It glowed with the same light as his mark. "Place it in the activation slot," she said. Chase knelt and set the globe into a carved depression at the center of the floor. The rooms around it shivered and glowed bright white. A low hum filled the chamber, like a heartbeat waking from a long sleep. Slowly, the cables in the floor began to pulse. Light traveled up each cable into the Frostborn's backs. One by one, the Frostborn's eyes lit up with pale blue fire. Their bodies shifted. Ice cracked. Metal creaked. Jace and Saren watched, breath held. The first Frostborn stepped forward, its joints moving smoothly. It raised its head and looked at them with glowing eyes. Then another woke and another, until 24 Frostborns stood behind Jace and Saren, silent but ready. Queen Illyria stepped into the chamber. She walked among the Frostborn, touching one on the shoulder. "It is as the legend said," she whispered. "They serve again." Chase felt pride and awe. He reached out to Saren's hand. "We did it," he said quietly. Saren nodded, tears in her eyes. "The bond was the key," she replied. Suddenly, the chamber shook, lights dimmed. An alarm echoed through the corridors above. Illyria frowned and turned to her guards. "What is happening?" One guard bowed. "My queen, our orbital scanners detect a large human dreadnought entering Uranus' atmosphere. It is armed for war." Jace's heart pounded. He had hoped to avoid more conflict, but fate had other plans. Saren's hand tightened on his. "They have come for us," she said. Queen Illyria drew a deep breath. She raised her voice. "Ready the Frostborn. Sound the call to arms. We defend our home." The Frostborn shifted into formation behind them. Their armor glowed brighter, reflecting determination and ancient loyalty. Jace looked at Saren and then at the Queen. He felt the bond's power coursing through him. "We stand together," Queen Illyria declared. "For the elves, for Uranus, for our future." With that, Jace, Saren, and Illyria strode toward the chamber doors. The Frostborn marched behind them. Above, the dreadnought cast a shadow across the frozen peaks. The battle for Uranus had begun. Jace and the Frostborn warriors returned to the Citadel's heart, where banners of ice fluttered in silent corridors. They passed the Grand Hall, now emptied of most elves who had gone to prepare defenses. Only a handful remained, faces tense, voices low. Saren moved beside Jace, leaning on him for support. Her breathing was slow, but each step still caused her to wince. As they reached the command chamber, Queen Illyria awaited them under a vaulted ceiling carved from glacial crystal. Her expression was grave. "The shields are failing," she said. "We cannot hold the perimeter." Jace frowned. "The Frostborn held the east wall," he said. "How can the shields be down?" Illyria's eyes flicked toward a guard standing at attention. "Someone sabotaged the power conduits," she replied. "We must find the traitor." At that moment, a clatter echoed from a side corridor. The guard raised his weapon, but Jace shook his head. He approached the shadows and called softly, "Who's there?" A figure stumbled forward, hood falling back to reveal a familiar face, Vashara, Illyria's cousin. Her eyes burned with anger and fear. Behind her, two more elves grasped smoking devices that hummed with damaged energy. "You," Illyria cried. "You betrayed us?" Vashara spat, her voice trembling. "He's not one of us. That human and his bond with Saren will destroy our way of life." She pointed at Jace. "You opened our gates to him." Saren stepped between them. "No," she said softly. "Jace risked everything to save us." With a sharp motion, Vashara pressed a small blade into Saren's side. The knife's edge glowed with corrupted frost energy. Saren gasped, stumbling backward as blood darkened her tunic. Jace lunged, catching Vashara's hand and wrenching the blade free. Saren collapsed to the floor. "Saren," Jace shouted, kneeling beside her. Her breathing was shallow, and her face was pale against the ice. Vashara backed away, pulling a strange device from her belt. It crackled with stolen power. "The Frostborn will obey me," she said. "And when the dreadnought lands, I will rule this citadel." Illyria drew her sword, its crystal edge humming. "You will answer for this treachery," she declared. Vashara struck the device against the floor. Sparks flew and the ground trembled. The shields flickered, plunging the chamber into dim red light. Outside, alarms wailed. Jace picked Saren up, pressing his coat around her wound. "Stay with me," he murmured. "Hold on." Illyria rushed Vashara, blade slicing through the air. The cousin parried clumsily, panic in every move. Frost shards fell from the ceiling as their weapons clashed. Each strike rang like distant thunder. Jace supported Saren as she slipped in and out of consciousness. Her life faded like melting ice. He closed his eyes, feeling his bond power surge in anger. The mark on his hand flared bright. With a thought, he sent a pulse of energy through Saren's body. An old healing runic wave he had glimpsed in the bonding ritual. Warmth spread through her chest, and her breathing steadied. Her eyes fluttered open. "Jace," she whispered. He smiled, tears in his eyes. "I'm here." Above, Illyria disarmed Vashara, sending the traitor's sword skittering across the floor. The device sputtered and died. The red glow vanished as power returned to the shields. Vashara collapsed to her knees, crying. "I was afraid," she sobbed. "I thought you would abandon our people." Illyria lowered her sword, her voice soft. "We will rebuild together, but betray us again, and you will face justice." Jace gently laid Seren on a makeshift bed. The queen knelt beside her, placing a hand on her forehead. The healing runes glowed faintly on Seren's skin. Through the chamber's open doors, the Frostborn stood ready once more. Outside, the dreadnought loomed over the mountains. Inside, Jace, Seren, and Illyria prepared to face the storm, united by trust and the trials they had overcome.